actually, this is sort of, your answer kind of went into what I was going to say, is that a lot of people, one person in the previous panel sort of mentioned obliquely that the Gamergate advocates would randomly accuse people of various kinds of isms, and one of them was ableism, simply because one of the prominent Gamergate people had some sort of disability. And one of the things that it keeps just getting to me is the denial of the fact that, every one of us has social skills problems, right? You can't just excuse people acting like massive jackasses because those people have social skills problems because they're gamers. And the rest of us are somehow not gamers and we don't have social skills problems. And we don't have any emotional reaction to people randomly attacking us on the internet because we've never been bullied like they have. And we understand social norms unlike them because somehow there aren't any people on the autism spectrum or with social anxiety disorders in the anti-Gamergate crowd. And I don't know what to say about that except for that every time that someone in our community says, well, actually, no, we have disabilities too, that gets used against us, and we can't even say that because then people will start piling on people who said that they had a mental health issue and trying to get them to commit suicide or trying to get them to have a panic attack, trying to get them to be triggered if they say that they have an actual trigger. And I just don't know what to do about that.
Well, I think, and this is something that's a tough issue. There is a sense in which when you use a word like ableism, you collapse something very complicated into a very simple thing, and so there is privilege, a spectrum of privilege within people who are disabled, and some people have disabilities that are seen as more legitimate than others, and people who like to cry ableism disingenuously love to jump on that. So, to take your example, the admin of 8chan is in a wheelchair, he has osteogenesis imperfecta, and so he has a very visible disability, and it's very easy to point to that and say, well, he's more disabled than you, therefore he wins this Oppression Olympics, to say that certain forms of illness aren't real because they're less obvious. And a lot of that, when someone says they have depression, that always happens. You're looking for an excuse not to work. I have an anxiety disorder. You're looking for an excuse for people to baby you. And that's messed up. And as long as you're coming at it from a perspective of how am I going to win this conversation instead of actually, be empathetic to other people, that's always, those weapons of privilege are always going to be there no matter what social justice rhetoric you cloak it in. But to take your particular point, I do think this is strongly tied to gender, and it's tied to gender in a weird and complex way. And I'm not going to say it's simplistically that men have an easier time of it, but the fact that we link the idea of having poor social skills to masculinity, that it's a guy thing, means that there's a certain narrative that guys can insert themselves into more easily. And so you notice it's always the awkward guy and the popular girl, and the popular girl being cruel to the awkward guy. And you notice that the narrative is always the responsibility is entirely on the popular girl to understand and empathize with the awkward guy and do the thing that will make him feel good. It's never that maybe he should understand her perspective, or that they mutually don't understand each other, and that it's nobody's fault that people are hurting each other's feelings. But instead, it's this is gonna sound very women's studies-ish. There's an emotional labor that we expect women to perform. Women's job is to be nice. Men don't have to be nice. Women have to be nice to men. If a woman's mean, then she is failing her duty as a woman. And so there's actually, there's very strong evidence, for instance, that being on the autism spectrum is as common among women as men, except for a few specific symptoms. And those symptoms are because women are socialized much more strongly to not display those symptoms. That as a girl, you are put under way more pressure. You get get shat on a lot more for, you know, not smiling, not making eye contact, going through social niceties. And that actually means that autistic women may suffer more, be put under more stress, but not look like externally they're autistic. And that's a really big part of this like narrative, the Gamergate narrative, or like the narrative of this subculture. There's, like we talked about, like the Chan culture, like a lot of these are guys who have a very strong belief. Women have it easy, women understand social skills, women have social capital, and men are the ones who are, you know, being rejected because of it. And that's a very false but very easy narrative. And I can see, once you understand, like, this is a story that we're telling, that the story is always about men struggling to get women to like them, and it's women who like hold the keys and who, you know, then you can step back and say, okay, but what if we flip that script? What if that story's bullshit? What if the woman needs something from men just as much as men are the ones with the power to withhold it, and they not only have the power to withhold it, but they get to say, I'm withholding affection because I have an illness that keeps me from doing it, so you're being even crueler to me by pointing out that I'm being cruel to you, you know? And it's a nasty, nasty cycle. It's very hard to break out of, but I think it's very important to recognize that you're not being compassionate to someone when you feed that narrative, because there's no way out of that. Unless we were to like literally make women slaves and force every woman to like be paired off with a horrible guy that she doesn't like, the blaming and getting mad at women just makes it worse, you know. And I, as a guy, have talked a lot about it from the guy's perspective, so I'm gonna back off. But.
It's complicated, which is my response to that, and I know this is gonna be probably one of those situations where I'm like, I don't feel the I don't know. You talked about it way better than I could in that case, but it's rough, and I'm not a big fan of the sort of like oppression Olympics, like slalom, biathlon, you know, biathlon, polyathlon, you know. But there's sort of like, well, I have it worse. Well, I have it worse. Well, I have it worse. Well, you know, it's like this great scene from PCU. Oh my God, this is a great movie. I love that movie. PCU, go watch it. It's awesome. Where everybody's sort of like standing in line to get into this party, and it's like all of the minorities are standing in line. They're trying to like get into this party, you know, and then it's like the black man's been kept down forever. You know, it's like, well, gay men around the world, you know, I get criticized everywhere I go. You know, it's like, women are oppressed around the world, give it a rest, you know, and it's sort of like playing this oppression Olympics, and it's like, you know, let's all have a good time and go to this like raging party, and be awesome at this party together, and like get wasted at this dorm, which is kind of cool. But I'm not into the...
Well, there was a question earlier about whether ultimately there's anything good that has come out of Gamergate, and it got me thinking that, you know, Xbox Live has been awful forever. It's a joke that it's been terrible forever. You know, personally, I was doxxed, but that was 16 years ago. This was a long time ago. I mean, to some extent, Gamergate has always existed. It's just, it has blown up now, and people are talking about it. It's on the cover of Business Week, it's on Time Magazine, it's all over. People are talking about it. I mean, we had a full house here to talk about it. So, ultimately, I think it's sort of good that we're talking about these things, and that something good might come out of it. I was just wondering if you could elaborate on whether you think that Gamergate is a new thing, or if it's just sort of a continuation of something that has always existed, if it's probably not being clear.
No, I get it. At least I think I do. And I'll jump in first, because I've been on the internet a long time. So I think the biggest change, and this is a good thing, is the mainstreaming of nerd culture. The biggest reason that the New York Times cares about it now, and the Wall Street Journal, and ABC News, is because they are thinking it could happen to me. Because the reporter who did that ABC News The Nightline story has a Twitter account. Because the people writing for the New York Times and Wall Street Journal, they're on Facebook. And they are getting this nasty stuff that was allowed to fester because the internet wasn't real, it was just for those weird people, is now like, it's part of everybody's lives, and so now it's everybody's problem. And this is why I really feel for girls who got into digital culture and nerd culture at a young age, because they're at an age where the rest of the world didn't understand and didn't care. And it was very much this, what were you doing in that part of town kind of thing. That I know, like, if in the 90s, a girl who was into like muds or something, or into chemrons, and she got attacked and harassed, people would say, wait, you were on a chat room on the internet? What were you doing there? You know, normal people don't do that, so you were asking for it because you were there. The positive sides of it, the why would you do it, you know, the why do I need to be online, that wasn't communicated in the world. Even now, there's a split between the generation that's like, it's terrible that I can't go on Twitter without being harassed, and the generation that says, why are you even on Twitter, what's the point? And you have to explain all of that before they'll take you seriously at the police station, right? But we're getting to the point where people are saying, you know, okay, the internet's a wonderful tool, it's invaluable. To not be able to use it is to be cut out of a huge part of our society and our economy. It's all of our problems. Now I'm a normal person working for ABC News, and I wouldn't want to be thrown off of Twitter, so now I understand, you know?
Yes. It's hard to think about finding a silver lining in these things. I'd like to think that it has it has an interesting effect in the sense that, hey, you know, it's introduced me to a lot of people and introduced me to a lot of people's work that I would not have otherwise known before. Or like now, you know, people can kind of come up to me like, oh, you're doing the video game thing. Have you heard about this? You know, you had no idea how many of my professors are now emailing me going, have you heard what's happening? Are you okay? And I'm like, well, you know, if anything, all those folks that kind of looked at me weird when I said that I was studying video games, now they're like, oh, that makes total sense. It's like, you are on the forefront of something I know I was trying to tell you this entire time. And it's important. It sucks that this has to be the thing, but unfortunately, you know, I hate to, you know, use that whole, like, if it bleeds, it leads kind of thing, but, you know, we could talk about, it's like the Journey soundtrack got nominated for a Grammy or something. Like, we could have that conversation and have that be awesome, and then people are like, what, huh? Okay, cool. But death threats? Tell me more. So it kind of sucks that this is the way it had to happen. But I would like to think, and I hate that so many voices that otherwise would have been awesome and were awesome and continue to be awesome have abandoned games now and are writing about other things or have completely abandoned that stuff altogether. We have lost a lot of people along the way, and that is tragic. It's, you know, but at the same time, you know, I don't want to give it like any legitimacy. Like,
it feels like sort of the beginning of the end.
I've been kind of trying to think of a metaphor, so I just thought of one. But it's like when your alcoholic friend finally gets in a car wreck and they take his driver's license, and AA will say you have to hit bottom before you can turn your life around. And some people say, well, that was God's will. That was necessary. And I don't really believe that. There's lots of alcoholics who turn their lives around before that happens. And to say that you have to do that is to ignore that. There's a lot of people, individual people, who grew up, you know, before having to confront these horrifying things happening in the public sphere. They didn't have to be shamed by the freaking New York Times to know that this culture needed to be changed. But not everyone. And so at some point, it's not good that it happened. I wish it didn't happen. But if, as a result of it happening, people are forced to stop doing these things finally, then yeah, that part is good. And the flip side is, it would be even worse if it happened and they didn't change, because because somehow people saw this and said, well, let him keep his license. He wrecked one car, no big deal, and we continue. You know, so that's the thing we can't allow to happen.